The tears fell silently down Maya Ellis's cheeks as she sat alone in the dimly lit hospital chapel. Her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles had turned white, and she didn't even notice when the heavy wooden door creaked open behind her. She had been here for 3 hours now, ever since the doctors had taken her little brother Tommy back into emergency surgery. The 16-year-old had been in a car accident 2 weeks ago, and just when they thought he was improving, complications had set in. Internal bleeding they had missed. The surgeon's grave expression had told Maya everything she needed to know before he even spoke the words. Touch and go. Critical condition. Prepare for the worst. Maya was only 24, far too young to be the sole guardian of a teenage boy, but their parents had died in a house fire when Tommy was 8. She had dropped out of graduate school to take care of him, working double shifts as a nurse at this very hospital to make ends meet. And now, after 6 years of struggling and sacrificing and trying to be everything he needed, she might lose him anyway. The chapel was small and peaceful, with rows of simple wooden pews and stained glass windows that filtered the late afternoon sunlight into soft colors across the floor. Maya had always found comfort here during her breaks, but tonight there was no comfort to be found. She prayed words she could barely form, begging God or fate or whoever might be listening to spare Tommy's life. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching, didn't sense another presence until someone sat down beside her on the pew. Maya looked up, startled, her vision blurred with tears. Through the haze, she saw a man in an expensive dark suit, his tie loosened slightly, his face etched with exhaustion that matched her own. "I'm sorry," she whispered, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I didn't mean to disturb anyone." "You didn't," the man said quietly. His voice was deep and gentle, with an underlying strength that somehow made Maya feel less alone. He had dark hair that was slightly disheveled, as if he had been running his hands through it repeatedly, and striking features that would have been handsome if they weren't so drawn with worry. "I came here looking for some peace too." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She turned back to face the simple altar at the front of the chapel, trying to compose herself, but the tears kept coming, silent and relentless. After a moment, she felt rather than heard the man beside her bow his head. His voice was so low she almost couldn't make out the words, but she realized he was praying. Not for himself, but for her pain to end, for whatever burden she carried to be lifted. Something about that gesture, that kindness from a complete stranger, broke through the wall Maya had been building around herself. A sob escaped her throat, and then another, and suddenly she was crying in earnest, her whole body shaking with the force of her grief and fear. The man didn't try to touch her or offer platitudes. He simply sat beside her, a steady presence, and continued to pray quietly. When his prayer ended, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a clean handkerchief, offering it to her without a word. Maya took it gratefully, pressing the soft fabric against her face. It smelled faintly of expensive cologne and something else, something clean and masculine that was oddly comforting. "Thank you," she managed after several minutes, when her tears had finally subsided into hiccuping breaths. "I'm sorry for falling apart like that." "Don't apologize," the man said firmly. "Whatever you're going through, you have every right to feel it." Maya looked at him properly for the first time. He was probably in his early 30s, with dark brown eyes that held a depth of understanding that surprised her. There were lines around those eyes, the kind that came from bearing heavy responsibilities. His suit was clearly custom-made, probably worth more than Maya made in 3 months, but he wore it like he had forgotten he had it on. "My little brother," Maya heard herself say. "He's in surgery, it's not looking good." The man's expression softened with genuine sympathy. "How old?" 16. Car accident. We thought he was getting better, but—" Her voice trailed off. "I'm Ethan Zane," he said, extending his hand. "And I'm going to sit here with you until you hear something, if that's all right." Maya shook his hand, feeling the warmth and strength in his grip. "Maya Ellis. You don't have to do that. Don't you have somewhere to be?" "Nowhere more important than this," Ethan said simply. They sat together in companionable silence for a while. Maya found herself stealing glances at this stranger who had appeared when she needed someone most. There was something solid and reassuring about him, despite the weariness in his features. "Are you here for someone too?" Maya finally asked. Ethan nodded slowly. "My sister. She's been sick for a long time. Today is one of her bad days, and I needed a break from watching her suffer." He paused, his jaw tightening. "That sounds terrible, doesn't it?" "No," Maya said softly. "It sounds human. You can't pour from an empty cup." He turned to look at her, and something passed between them in that moment. A recognition of shared pain, of the particular exhaustion that comes from loving someone who is suffering and being powerless to fix it. "How long have you been taking care of your brother?" Ethan asked. 6 years. Our parents died when he was 8. Maya twisted the handkerchief in her hands. "I was just starting a graduate program in counseling psychology. I dropped out to take care of him." "That's a big sacrifice." "It wasn't a sacrifice," Maya said automatically, then reconsidered. "Or maybe it was, but it was worth it. Tommy is everything to me. He's smart and funny and kind. He wants to be an engineer. He has his whole life ahead of him." Her voice broke. "He has to be okay." Ethan reached over and gently placed his hand over both of hers, stilling their anxious movements. The gesture was neither presumptuous nor uncomfortable. It was exactly what Maya needed in that moment. "Tell me about him," Ethan said. "Tell me about Tommy." So Maya did. She told this stranger about her brother's terrible jokes and his obsession with building robots in their tiny apartment. About how he always made her coffee in the morning even though he didn't drink it himself. About the way he still got excited about snow days, and how he volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend. She talked until her throat was dry, and Ethan listened to every word, asking questions and even laughing at the funny stories. By the time Maya finally ran out of words, nearly an hour had passed. The chapel had grown darker, the stained glass windows no longer catching the sunlight. She felt wrung out but somehow lighter, as if sharing Tommy's story with someone had made her burden a little easier to carry. "He sounds like an amazing kid," Ethan said. "You've done a good job raising him." "I just tried not to screw him up too badly," Maya said with a weak smile. "I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't most days." "None of us do," Ethan replied. "We just do the best we can and hope it's enough." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Her heart leaped into her throat as she pulled it out with shaking hands. It was a text from Dr. Richardson, the surgeon. "Surgery is complete. Tommy is stable. Come to the ICU." Maya stared at the words, reading them 3 times before they sank in. Stable. Tommy was stable. "He's okay," she breathed. "He made it through." "Thank God," Ethan said, and the relief in his voice was genuine. Go see him." Maya stood up so quickly she felt dizzy. Then she turned back to Ethan, this man who had sat with her through the worst hours of her life. "Thank you. I don't know how to thank you enough for staying with me." "You don't need to thank me," Ethan said, standing as well. "I'm just glad he pulled through." Maya hesitated for a moment, then impulsively reached out and hugged him. Ethan seemed surprised but returned the embrace, his arms strong and steadying around her. "I still have your handkerchief," Maya said as she pulled back. "I'll wash it and bring it back." "Keep it," Ethan said with a small smile. "Consider it a gift." Maya nodded, clutching the handkerchief like a talisman as she hurried out of the chapel toward the ICU. She didn't look back, her mind already focused on Tommy. The ICU was on the 4th floor, and Maya took the stairs 2 at a time despite her exhaustion. Dr. Richardson was waiting outside Tommy's room, still in his surgical scrubs. "He's sedated but stable," the doctor explained. "We found the source of the bleeding and repaired it. The next 48 hours will be critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic." Maya could have kissed him. Instead, she thanked him profusely and asked if she could see Tommy. Dr. Richardson nodded and led her into the room. Tommy looked so small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines and monitors. His face was pale, almost gray, and there were dark circles under his closed eyes. But his chest was rising and falling steadily, and the monitors showed a strong, regular heartbeat. Maya sank into the chair beside his bed and took his hand carefully, mindful of the Roman 4 line. "I'm here, Tommy," she whispered. "I'm right here and you're going to be okay." She stayed there all night, dozing fitfully in the uncomfortable chair, jerking awake every time a monitor beeped or a nurse came to check on Tommy. By morning, her neck was stiff and her back ached, but Tommy's color looked better. The nurse who came in at 6 told her that his vitals were improving. It was 2 days before Tommy woke up properly. 2 days of Maya barely leaving his side, of holding her breath every time a doctor entered the room, of forcing herself to eat the tasteless hospital cafeteria food because she knew she needed to keep her strength up. When Tommy finally opened his eyes and gave her a weak smile, Maya burst into tears of relief. "You look terrible," Tommy croaked, his voice rough from the breathing tube. Maya laughed through her tears. "You're one to talk. You scared me half to death, kid." "Sorry," Tommy said. "Didn't mean to." "I know," Maya said, squeezing his hand gently. "But you're going to be okay now. The doctors fixed everything." Over the next week, Tommy improved steadily. He graduated from the ICU to a regular room, started eating solid food again, and complained about being bored, which Maya took as a very good sign. She went back to work for a few shifts, though she felt guilty leaving him even for a few hours. It was during one of those shifts, about 10 days after Tommy's surgery, that Maya saw Ethan again. She was walking through the main lobby toward the elevator, exhausted from a 12-hour shift in the pediatric ward, when she spotted him standing near the information desk. He looked tired but more put together than he had in the chapel, his suit crisp and his hair neatly styled. Maya's heart did an unexpected little skip. She had thought about Ethan often over the past week and a half, wondering about him and his sister, wishing she had gotten his contact information so she could let him know that Tommy was okay. "Ethan," she called out before she could second-guess herself. He turned at the sound of his name and his face lit up with recognition. "Maya, how's Tommy?" "He's doing great," Maya said, walking over to him. She was suddenly very aware of how she must look in her rumpled scrubs, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, probably smelling like hospital antiseptic. "He's being discharged tomorrow, actually. The doctors are really happy with his recovery." "That's wonderful news," Ethan said, and he looked genuinely delighted. "I've been wondering how you both were doing." "How's your sister?" Maya asked, Ethan's expression sobered. "She's having a rough time. That's why I'm here now, actually. She has an appointment with a new specialist." "I hope it helps," Maya said sincerely. "Me too," Ethan replied. Then he seemed to hesitate before adding, "I know this might be forward, but would you like to get coffee sometime? I'd love to hear how Tommy is doing." Maya felt warmth bloom in her chest. "I'd like that." "Actually, I was just about to grab a terrible cup of coffee from the cafeteria before I head home. Want to join me?" Ethan glanced at his watch, then nodded. "I have about half an hour before the appointment. Lead the way." They ended up sitting in a quiet corner of the hospital cafeteria, nursing cups of coffee that were indeed terrible. But Maya found she didn't care. Talking to Ethan felt easy and natural, like continuing a conversation they had started long ago. She learned that Ethan's sister was named Claire, that she was 28 and battling an autoimmune disease that had been slowly getting worse over the past 3 years. Ethan had been taking care of her while also running his business, trying to balance the demands of both. "What kind of business?" Maya asked. Ethan shifted slightly in his seat, and Maya got the impression he was uncomfortable discussing it. "Real estate development. It's not very exciting, but it pays the bills." Maya didn't press, though she suspected there was more to it than he was letting on. The way he carried himself, the quality of his clothes, the fact that he could apparently take time off whenever he needed to be with his sister, all suggested he was more than just comfortable financially. "And what about you?" Ethan asked. "You mentioned you were studying counseling psychology before Tommy's accident. Do you still want to go back to that?" Maya sighed. "Someday, maybe. Right now, I'm happy just being a nurse. The hours are flexible enough that I can be there for Tommy and the money is decent. Going back to school would mean taking on student loans, and we're still paying off Tommy's medical bills from when our parents died." "That's a lot to carry on your own," Ethan said quietly. "We manage," Maya said with a shrug. "Tommy got a part-time job last summer to help out, even though I told him he should focus on school. He's determined to pay his own way through college." Ethan's expression was thoughtful. "He learned that from you, that sense of responsibility." Maya felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Ethan said firmly. "Not anyone. Most people wouldn't have sacrificed their own dreams to take care of a kid. Most people would have found another way." Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she took a sip of her terrible coffee and changed the subject. They talked for the full half-hour, and when Ethan's phone alarm went off to remind him about his sister's appointment, Maya was disappointed to see him go. "Can I get your number?" Ethan asked as they stood to leave. "I'd like to keep in touch if that's okay." "I'd really like that," Maya said, trying not to sound too eager. They exchanged numbers, and Ethan promised to text her soon. Maya floated home that evening, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. She tried to tell herself it was just relief about Tommy's recovery, but she knew it was more than that. There was something about Ethan that drew her in. His kindness, his strength, the way he understood what it was like to be responsible for someone you loved. True to his word, Ethan texted her that evening. "It was really good to see you today. I hope you get some rest. You looked exhausted." Maya smiled at her phone as she typed back, "You sure know how to flatter a girl, but thank you, same to you." Over the next few weeks, Maya and Ethan fell into a pattern of texting throughout the day. Their conversations ranged from serious discussions about caretaking and medical struggles to silly exchanges about bad movies and worse hospital coffee. Maya found herself looking forward to his messages, smiling whenever her phone buzzed. They met for coffee twice more, both times at the hospital between Maya's shifts and Ethan's visits with Claire. Each time, Maya felt more drawn to him. He was intelligent and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh. But more than that, he saw her in a way few people did. He understood the weight she carried, the constant worry, the exhaustion that went bone deep. Tommy was thriving at home, getting stronger every day. He went back to school part-time, and Maya could see the color returning to his cheeks, the light coming back into his eyes. She would forever be grateful for his recovery, and a part of her would always associate that gratitude with Ethan, with the comfort he had offered her in the chapel. About a month after Tommy's discharge, Ethan invited Maya to dinner. Not coffee at the hospital, but an actual dinner date at a restaurant. Maya stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes, trying to decide what to wear. She didn't own many nice clothes. Most of her wardrobe consisted of scrubs and comfortable casual wear. Finally, she settled on a simple navy blue dress that she had bought for a friend's wedding a few years ago and rarely had occasion to wear. Tommy whistled when she emerged from her bedroom. "Wow, Maya, you look amazing. Who's the lucky guy?" "His name is Ethan," Maya said, checking her reflection one more time. "We met at the hospital." "Is he a doctor?" Tommy asked, flopping onto the couch. "No, he was visiting his sister. We started talking and became friends." Tommy gave her a knowing look that was far too mature for a 16-year-old. "Friends, huh? Is that why you have been smiling at your phone constantly for the past month?" Maya threw a couch pillow at him, but she was smiling. "Mind your own business, brat." "I'm just saying it's good to see you happy," Tommy said more seriously. "You deserve that, Maya, after everything you have done for me." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back. "You're everything to me, Tommy. Don't forget that." "I know," he said. "But you're allowed to have a life too. I'm not a little kid anymore." The doorbell rang before Maya could respond. She took a deep breath, grabbed her purse, and went to answer it. Ethan stood on the other side, wearing dark jeans and a gray button-down shirt that made his eyes look almost silver. He held a small bouquet of tulips, Maya's favorite flower, though she wasn't sure how he knew that. "You look beautiful," Ethan said, and the way he looked at her made Maya's heart race. "Thank you," Maya said, accepting the flowers. "Come in for a second. I'll put these in water." Ethan followed her inside, and Tommy immediately appeared from the living room, sizing up the older man with protective interest. "You must be Tommy," Ethan said, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about you." Tommy shook his hand, his grip firm. "Same here." "You're the guy from the chapel, right? Maya told me how you stayed with her during my surgery." "She needed someone," Ethan said simply. "I'm really glad you're doing better." "Me too," Tommy said with a grin. Then he fixed Ethan with a stern look that would have been more intimidating if he weren't still so skinny from his hospital stay. "Take care of my sister, okay? She doesn't get out much." "Tommy," Maya groaned, her face heating. "I will," Ethan promised seriously. "We will not be late." They left Tommy with strict instructions to heat up the lasagna Maya had left for him and not to stay up too late playing video games. As they walked to Ethan's car, Maya apologized for her brother. "He means well. He's just protective." "As he should be," Ethan said, opening the passenger door for her. "You're lucky to have each other." Ethan had made reservations at a small Italian restaurant across town. It was intimate and cozy with warm lighting and checkered tablecloths. Not too fancy, but clearly nice. Maya relaxed as they were seated in a quiet corner booth. Over dinner, they talked like they had been doing for weeks, but somehow being here together, away from the hospital and the weight of their responsibilities, felt different, more real. Maya found herself telling Ethan things she rarely shared with anyone. About the guilt she sometimes felt when she resented having to grow up so fast. About the fear that she wasn't doing enough for Tommy. About the dreams she had put on hold and wasn't sure she would ever get back to. Ethan listened to all of it without judgment, his dark eyes focused intently on her face. "Can I tell you something?" Ethan said when she finally fell silent. "And please don't take this the wrong way." "Okay," Maya said cautiously. "I haven't been completely honest with you about my work," Ethan said. "I told you I'm in real estate development, which is true, but what I didn't tell you is the scale of it. My company, Zane Properties, is one of the largest development firms on the East Coast. I'm not just comfortable financially, I'm wealthy, very wealthy." Maya blinked, processing this information. She had suspected he was well off, but this was on a different level entirely. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because people treat you differently when they know," Ethan said. "They want something from you, or they see dollar signs instead of a person. But with you, from the very first moment in that chapel, you just saw me. Not my money or my position, just me. And I didn't want to lose that." Maya thought about this. "I appreciate your honesty. But for the record, it doesn't change anything. You're still the guy who sat with me and prayed for my pain to end. That's who you are to me." Ethan's expression softened with relief. "Thank you. That means more than you know. Can I ask you something?" Maya said. "If you're that successful, why were you so exhausted that day in the chapel? I know taking care of Claire is hard, but couldn't you hire help?" "I do have help," Ethan admitted. "Claire has round-the-clock nurses, but they can't be her brother. They can't hold her hand when she's scared or make her laugh when she's depressed. Some things you can't outsource, no matter how much money you have." Maya reached across the table and took his hand. "You're a good brother." "I try to be," Ethan said, "but some days it feels like I'm failing her. I can buy her the best medical care in the world, but I can't make her better. I can't take away her pain." "That's not on you," Maya said gently. "You're doing everything you can. Sometimes that has to be enough." They finished dinner and Ethan drove her home, but neither of them wanted the evening to end. They sat in his car outside Maya's apartment building, talking for another hour. At some point, Ethan's hand found hers again, and Maya didn't pull away. "I'd really like to see you again," Ethan said. "Not just for coffee at the hospital. Really see you." "I'd like that too," Maya said softly. Ethan walked her to her door, and for a moment Maya thought he might kiss her. But instead, he brought her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Good night, Maya." "Good night, Ethan." Maya floated into the apartment to find Tommy still awake, pretending to watch TV but clearly waiting for her. "So," he asked, "how was it?" "It was really nice," Maya said, unable to keep the smile off her face. "You really like him, don't you?" "I really do," Maya admitted. "Is that okay with you?" Tommy rolled his eyes. "Maya, you don't need my permission to date someone. But yeah, from the 5 minutes I met him, he seems like a good guy. And you deserve a good guy." Maya hugged her brother tightly. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best," Tommy said. Over the next 2 months, Maya and Ethan's relationship deepened. They went on proper dates to restaurants and movies. Ethan took her to an art gallery opening, and Maya brought him to Tommy's robotics competition at school. They spent long evenings talking on the phone when they couldn't see each other in person. Maya met Claire one afternoon at the hospital. She was a beautiful woman with the same dark eyes as her brother, but illness had taken its toll. She was frail and tired easily, but her spirit was strong. She and Maya bonded immediately over their mutual love of terrible reality TV shows, and Claire seemed delighted that her brother had found someone who made him happy. "He's been different since he met you," Claire told Maya during one of her hospital stays. "Lighter somehow. Less burdened." "Thank you for that." "He does the same for me," Maya said honestly. Tommy and Ethan developed their own friendship. Ethan showed genuine interest in Tommy's robotics projects and even connected him with an engineer at one of his companies who could mentor him. Tommy started calling Ethan his friend, which Maya knew was high praise from her protective little brother. Everything felt right in a way Maya's life hadn't felt in years. She was happy. Truly, deeply happy. And it scared her sometimes, because she knew from experience how quickly happiness could be taken away. 3 months into their relationship, Ethan invited Maya to his house for the first time. He picked her up on a Saturday afternoon when Tommy was at a friend's place, and drove them to an address in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the city. Maya had known Ethan was wealthy, but she wasn't prepared for the reality of his home. It was a modern mansion with floor-to-ceiling windows and immaculate landscaping, the kind of house she had only seen in magazines. "This is where you live?" Maya asked as they pulled through the gate. "It's too big for just me," Ethan admitted. "I bought it thinking Claire could live here with me, but she prefers her own place downtown, closer to her friends and her doctors." Ethan gave her a tour of the house, which had multiple guest rooms, a state-of-the-art kitchen, a home gym, and an indoor pool. But Maya noticed that despite the expensive furnishings, it didn't feel lived in. It felt lonely. They ended up in the kitchen, where Ethan insisted on cooking dinner for her. Maya sat at the counter, watching him move around the space with surprising competence. "I didn't know billionaires could cook," she teased. "This billionaire can," Ethan replied, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. "My mother insisted Claire and I learn. She said we should never be dependent on anyone for basic life skills." "Smart woman," Maya said. "She was," Ethan said, his expression softening with memory. "She died 5 years ago, cancer. Claire's illness started not long after. Some days I think the stress of losing Mom triggered it." "I'm sorry," Maya said. "What about your father?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "He's around, we're not close." "He remarried 6 months after Mom died, moved to Europe with his new wife. He sends Claire money for her medical care but doesn't visit." "That must be hard," Maya said. "It is what it is," Ethan said with a shrug, but Maya could hear the hurt beneath his casual tone. "Claire and I are all each other has, which is why I will do anything to help her get better." They ate dinner on the terrace overlooking the pool as the sun set. The food was delicious, and the company was better. As darkness fell and the outdoor lights came on, creating a warm glow, Ethan reached across the table and took Maya's hand. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice serious. "I'm falling in love with you, Maya. I think I've been since that day in the chapel. And I need you to know that before we go any further." Maya's breath caught. She had felt it too, this growing thing between them, but hearing him say it out loud made it real. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered, "and that terrifies me." "Why does it terrify you?" Ethan asked gently. "Because everyone I've ever loved, I've lost or almost lost," Maya said, her voice breaking. "My parents, Tommy almost. I don't know if I can survive losing someone else." Ethan stood up and came around the table, pulling Maya to her feet and into his arms. She buried her face against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You're not going to lose me," Ethan said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere." "You can't promise that," Maya said. "No one can." "You're right," Ethan acknowledged. "But I can promise that I will do everything in my power to be here for you and Tommy. I can promise that I will love you with everything I have for as long as I'm able." "Is that enough?" Maya pulled back to look up at him. In the soft light, his face was open and vulnerable, and she saw the same fear in his eyes that she felt in her heart. He was as scared of losing her as she was of losing him. "Yes," Maya said. "That's enough." Ethan kissed her then, soft and sweet at first, then deeper as Maya wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back. It felt like coming home, like finding a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing. They stayed on the terrace for hours, talking and kissing and planning a future together. Ethan wanted to meet Maya's extended family and introduce her to his business partners. Maya wanted to take things slow enough that Tommy could adjust, but fast enough that she didn't waste any more time being apart from this man she loved. When Ethan drove Maya home that night, she felt like she was floating. Everything in her life was finally coming together. Tommy was healthy. She had a job she was good at. And she had found someone who loved her not despite her responsibilities, but because of the person those responsibilities had shaped her into. The next few months were the happiest of Maya's life. She and Ethan settled into a comfortable rhythm, balancing their time between his world and hers. He took her to charity galas and business dinners, where she learned to navigate conversations with people who had more money than she could comprehend. She brought him to Tommy's school events and dinners with the other nurses from the hospital, where he fit in perfectly despite his wealth. Claire's health stabilized with a new treatment protocol, and she started regaining some of her strength. She and Tommy became friends, bonding over video games and sci-fi movies. The four of them had dinner together once a week, creating a little makeshift family. Maya had been dating Ethan for 8 months when he sat her down one evening with a serious expression that made her heart sink. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "Is it Claire? Is she sick again?" "No, no," Ethan said quickly. "Claire's fine. This is about us." Maya felt cold dread wash over her. This was it. He was going to end things. She had let herself be too happy, and now it was all going to fall apart. "Maya, you're panicking," Ethan said, taking her hands. "Breathe. This is good news, I promise." "Then why do you look so nervous?" Maya asked. "Because what I'm about to ask you is the most important question I've ever asked anyone," Ethan said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Maya's hands flew to her mouth. "I love you," Ethan said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful diamond ring, elegant and understated. "I love your strength and your kindness and your fierce devotion to the people you care about. I love how you make me laugh and how you see the world. I love that you chose to sit in that chapel on the worst day of your life, and that I was lucky enough to find you there. Maya Ellis, will you marry me?" "Yes," Maya said through her tears. "Yes, yes, yes." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Maya kissed him back, tasting salt from both their tears, feeling joy so big it seemed impossible to contain. "I need to ask Tommy for his blessing," Ethan said when they finally broke apart. "I wanted to propose first, but I should have asked him before. He's going to be thrilled," Maya assured him. "He already thinks of you as family." They drove to Maya's apartment, where Tommy was studying for his finals. He took one look at Maya's tear-streaked face and the ring on her finger and broke into a huge grin. "Finally," Tommy said. "I was wondering when you were going to propose." "You knew?" Maya asked. "Ethan asked me 2 weeks ago if it would be okay," Tommy said. "I told him he was an idiot for even asking. Of course it's okay." Ethan cleared his throat. "I wanted to talk to you about something else too. I know Maya is your guardian and that won't change, but I want you to know that when we get married, you're not just getting her. You're getting me too. I want to be there for you for college applications and graduation and whatever comes next, if you'll let me." Tommy's eyes went bright with unshed tears. "I'd like that. I'd like that a lot." The three of them hugged and Maya felt her heart overflow. This was her family. Broken and pieced together and unconventional, but hers. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Claire was Maya's maid of honor, despite still being weak from her treatments. Tommy walked Maya down the aisle, his hand steady in hers. And Ethan waited at the altar, looking at Maya like she was the most precious thing in the world. Maya's vows were simple. "You found me at my lowest point and sat beside me. You prayed for my pain to end, and you've been answering that prayer every day since. I promise to do the same for you, in sickness and in health, for all the days of our lives." There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel, the very same chapel where they had met. After the wedding, Maya moved into Ethan's house with Tommy. The space that had felt so empty and lonely became warm and full of life. Tommy took over one of the guest rooms and filled it with his robotics projects. Claire visited often, getting stronger each month. They adopted a dog, a goofy golden retriever that Tommy named Professor Fluffabutt, and the house finally felt like a home. Maya went back to school, enrolling in an online program to finish her degree in counseling psychology. Ethan supported her completely, insisting that she cut back her nursing shifts so she could focus on her studies. They talked about her maybe opening her own practice someday, specializing in grief counseling for families dealing with medical crises. A year after their wedding, Claire went into remission. The doctors were cautiously optimistic that the latest treatment protocol had worked. At her celebration dinner, she announced that she had met someone, a physical therapist she had been working with, and she was happier than she had been in years. Tommy graduated from high school with honors and a full scholarship to study engineering at a prestigious university. Maya cried through the entire ceremony, overwhelmed with pride and gratitude that he had made it to this milestone. 2 years into their marriage, Maya found out she was pregnant. She had been feeling tired and nauseous for weeks, assuming it was just stress from her internship hours. When the pregnancy test came back positive, she sat on the bathroom floor for 10 minutes, just staring at it. She was excited but also terrified. What if something went wrong? What if she couldn't be a good mother because she had used up all her parenting energy on Tommy? Ethan found her there, still holding the test. He took one look at her face and knew. "We're having a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "Are you happy?" Maya asked. "We never really talked about kids." "I'm thrilled," Ethan said, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. Terrified but thrilled. "We're going to do this together, Maya, just like everything else." Tommy was over the moon when they told him. He immediately started planning how he would teach his niece or nephew about engineering and gaming. Claire bought out an entire baby store worth of gifts. And Maya, despite her fears, found herself getting excited too. Their daughter was born on a snowy December evening, 7 pounds of squalling perfection. They named her Grace because that's what she was. Amazing grace. Undeserved favor. A blessing they hadn't known they were waiting for. Holding Grace in her arms, with Ethan beside her and Tommy peeking in through the hospital room door, Maya thought back to that day in the chapel. The worst day of her life, when she thought she would lose Tommy and be left alone in the world. She had been so broken then, so sure that happiness was something that happened to other people. And then a man had sat down beside her and prayed for her pain to end. That prayer had been answered in ways Maya never could have imagined. Not just in Tommy's recovery, but in everything that came after. The love she found, the family they built, the healing they all experienced together. 3 years later, they had a son they named Peter, who had Ethan's dark eyes and Maya's stubborn determination. Tommy came home from college every chance he got to spoil his niece and nephew rotten. Claire, now 5 years in remission and engaged to her physical therapist, was their favorite aunt. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Ethan surprised Maya with a trip back to the hospital chapel. They slipped in during a quiet afternoon, sitting in the same pew where they had first met. "You remember what I prayed for that day?" Ethan asked, taking Maya's hand. "You prayed for my pain to end," Maya said. "I prayed for more than that," Ethan said. "I prayed that whoever you were, whatever you were going through, that you would find peace. And I prayed that if there was any way I could help, that I would be given the chance." "You did more than help," Maya said softly. "You gave me everything." "No," Ethan said, bringing her hand to his lips. "You gave me everything. Before I met you, I was just going through the motions. Work and taking care of Claire and nothing else. You taught me how to live again, how to hope, how to love fully even when you're scared." They sat together in the peaceful quiet of the chapel, their fingers intertwined, surrounded by the soft-colored light from the stained glass windows. So much had changed since that first day. But some things remained the same. The comfort of sitting beside someone who understood your pain. The power of a prayer spoken in desperation and answered beyond imagining. The grace of finding love in the darkest places. Maya thought about the girl she had been 5 years ago, crying alone and convinced her world was ending. She wished she could go back and tell that girl that she would survive this, that the man sitting beside her in the chapel would become her husband, that her brother would not only live but thrive, that she would build a beautiful, messy, perfect life out of the wreckage of that terrible day. But maybe she didn't need to go back. Maybe the best thing she could do was move forward, carrying the lessons she had learned. That love was always worth the risk. That family was what you made of it. That sometimes the worst moments open doors to the best ones. What are you thinking about? Ethan asked, studying her face. I'm thinking about how grateful I am, Maya said, for all of it, even the hard parts, because they led me here. To a hospital chapel, Ethan teased gently. To you, Maya said. To us. To this life we built together. Ethan kissed her softly, and Maya kissed him back, pouring 5 years of love and gratitude into it. They left the chapel hand in hand, walking out into the bright sunshine of an autumn afternoon. They had dinner plans with Tommy and Claire, and then they needed to pick up Grace and Peter from Ethan's assistant, who had been kind enough to babysit. They had a regular, busy, beautiful life to get back to. But Maya would never forget that day in the chapel, or the man who sat beside her and prayed. Some prayers were answered immediately, some took time, and some were answered in ways you never expected, transforming your entire life in the process. As they drove home, Maya looked at the man beside her, the father of her children, her partner, her love. He caught her looking and smiled, that same gentle smile he had given her years ago when she was a stranger crying in a chapel. I love you, Maya said. I love you too, Ethan replied. Always have, always will. And Maya knew with absolute certainty that it was true. They had found each other in pain and built a life in joy. They had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs. They had created a family out of love and determination and grace. Years later, when Grace was old enough to ask how Mommy and Daddy met, Maya would tell her the story. About the scary day when Uncle Tommy was sick and how Daddy found Mommy crying in a chapel. How he sat beside her, a complete stranger, and prayed for her pain to end. And did it end? Grace would ask, her eyes wide. Yes, Maya would say, pulling her daughter close. Not all at once, but yes. The pain ended and something beautiful began. That beautiful thing continued for the rest of their lives, through graduations and weddings and the birth of grandchildren. Through Claire's complete recovery and Tommy's successful engineering career. Through all the ordinary days and extraordinary moments that made up a life well lived. It all started in a chapel, with tears and prayers and a simple act of compassion. With a man who saw someone suffering and chose to sit beside them. With a woman who opened her heart despite her fear and let love in, and it grew into something magnificent. A love story. A family story. A story about finding light in darkness and hope in despair. About the power of human connection and the grace of answered prayers. Maya and Ethan lived that story every day for the rest of their lives, grateful for the chance encounter that changed everything. They loved deeply and completely, creating a legacy of compassion and kindness that would ripple out to touch countless lives. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person who cares enough to sit beside you in your darkest hour. One person who prays for your pain to end and then stays to help make that prayer come true. One moment of connection that blooms into a lifetime of love. That was their story, and it was beautiful.